liked your setup last time I saw you in person, like north of Manhattan.
Okay, there was the Greenpoint studio that was cool, totally. And then there was the suburban one in Hastings. Did you make it to that? Yeah.
Hastings, that's when I saw you. And your house just caught on fire and you were remodeling it.
Yeah.
And thankfully the studio wasn't touched, which that would have been crazy.
So dude, like how long ago was that?
It was like 2014.
Yeah.
I came back to visit after Dubspot, the Dubspot days, which you taught at.
It's a long time, dude.
Dude, that's been a while. Yeah. Dubspot RIP was like closing. You left, you started your own Next Level Sounds Academy.
Yes.
That was the beginning, and it seems like it's still going strong.
Dubspot, like we were going to take over the world, as you know, and then we weren't. And then, for like, that's a whole other story. I had a like non-compete clause that I couldn't compete for a year. So I sat on my hands for a year just because like I didn't want like lawsuits with crazy people and stuff like this.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
And no, it wasn't fun. I didn't want it. And then I started mixmasterwyatt.com Academy, right? That was the first one. So that was 2 years. And it was very successful, but then I felt like it was too much about me and too much about mixing and mastering. And I wanted I don't want to say like I wanted something like Dubspot, but I wanted a complete thing, like with composition and production and business. And I took the little taco truck that was Mixmaster Wyatt. We turned it into a restaurant, Next Level Sound.
Nice.
It just caught on really quick. And at the first 3 weeks of COVID, like we had our biggest sales ever.
That's awesome.
And then when people realized that COVID wasn't going to last 2 weeks, and it was another 2 weeks and another 2 weeks, I think if it wasn't, vodka or toilet paper, you weren't selling anything. Nobody was buying anything.
Or hand sanitizer.
Yeah, hand sanitizer, vodka, toilet paper. That's all you got. I felt like when COVID was like at its worst, I felt weird talking about like plugins and compression and stuff. Like people were dying all over the world, and I was just, I was just like, I don't know if I can do a big anyway. Anyway, let's get back to compression. So we set it back a little bit and chilled, and I think everyone got a little Zoom fatigue too. Zoom was the best thing ever at first. We're like, Zoom. And like after a year, I was like, not another Zoom meeting, please. So I had to respect that a little,
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody's retinas were like bleeding out of their eyes because they're just glued to their phones or a computer screen like 12 hours a day every day. Yeah. That was me anyway. Yeah. And then Zoom was getting hacked with like security vulnerabilities, and then people are getting Zoom bombed. I don't know if that ever happened to you. That happened to me a couple times. The company.
No. That's scary. Who Zoom bombed you?
I don't know. Some people who just like ran it. I mean, it was a thing. It's still happening constantly. Like people are.
What did they do?
They'll like show up and just say like really inappropriate things, or they would like hack your screen sharing and start screen sharing porn, or just like crazy stuff.
Were they audio people or just hooligans?
Just random trolls on Twitter that would like find public Zoom links or like hack their way into like Zoom meetings. Yeah, that was a real thing. It was crazy.
I heard about it. We never had that, but
that's good.
Yeah. This fall, it's our 7th year, which is pretty crazy.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I know.
That's awesome.
It's crazy.
That's awesome.
And I think also during COVID, I started, just trying to be a little sympathetic to everyone running out of money, which everyone did, I think. And so I just started putting stuff up on YouTube, like whole classes and stuff like that. And, I didn't want to cannibalize the content, but I also wanted to share it. And we've been putting stuff up very steadily, like whole hour lessons on the YouTube channel, and people really like it. And so,
Well, it sounds like things are going well, and like it's just good to see your face again. It's been so long.
Likewise. I feel like I want to interview you a little bit too. Like
another day, another time. But yeah, I don't know, 169 episodes later, here we are. So it's pretty wild.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been like honestly more work than I expected, but I love it. And I get to interview people that are smarter like you. By the way, you were I think the 8th or 9th guest on the podcast ever.
Top 10 at least.
You're in the top 10 for sure. people who maybe don't know you, maybe just share a brief introduction about yourself and memorable projects you've worked on, all that stuff.
I moved to New York City, didn't know anyone. I was 17, played D1 soccer, NC2A soccer at Columbia. We were second in the country, NC2A soccer.
Damn.
And I was super soccer and academics. And then hip hop started happening, in New York. And this is like 1985. But I started going downtown and going to the Roxy and going to the Funhouse. And I had some downtown friends that were kind of like hooligans. They weren't like part of the Columbia University thing. So I would go to class and I would jump on the train, go downtown and stay out all night. And I was like a break dancer. Like that was one of the things that I was also, that I grew up in like Berkeley, Oakland breakdancing stuff. So, and I wanted to get back into music. So I started playing congas. And I had a great teacher, John Amira, who's still around in New York and playing. And he was an Afro-Cuban, Afro-Haitian maestro. He would play Cuban ceremonies and Haitian voodoo ceremonies in Brooklyn. And so I was one of his drummers in his band. He invited me to play some of these like voodoo ceremonies in Brooklyn that would start at 11 and they go all night. People would get possessed and drinking rum and like, it was crazy. Yeah. We'd leave there at 7 a.m. And so that was my way back into music, was playing congas and playing Afro-Haitian, Afro-Cuban stuff. And so he started like inviting people to sit in. Like we got a bass player and we got a guitarist to the drum circle. And then we got a singer, Nicole Willis, and we started making songs. Jonathan Marin came as a bass player, probably the best musician of all of us. And we started writing songs. And then we started performing downtown. We played a gig and Scott Barkham showed up. He was a studio manager for Gary Katz, who was Steely Dan's producer, right? Nice. And Donald Fagen's studio, River Sound, up on the Upper East Side. And he came down, he said, hey, my boss can get people signed on Warner Brothers. He's like music, great, and whatever, great producer. And let's see if he likes your stuff, blah, blah, blah. So he came, he liked it. A couple weeks later, we were flown out to Los Angeles, to Warner Brothers. Lenny Warnaker signed us, who signed Prince and all this stuff. And we got $1 million record deal based on one song that we had done that was recorded.
That's crazy.
I know, crazy. And it was Nicole Willis at that time was my girlfriend. So it was like, anyway, and somehow I was still trying to like impress my parents. So I was at NYU Business School taking marketing, but I was like hating the classes and I was like doing terrible and not even doing any of the work. And I was just biding my time. So we got this record deal and I was like, NYU marketing or Rockstar with my girlfriend. I went with Rockstar with my girlfriend, let the marketing go, never turn back to that anything like that. And that was that. So we got signed. The first release was the release that I sent you, which was a tribute to Curtis Mayfield.
Yes.
And Curtis Mayfield at that time was still alive, but he was paralyzed from an accident. A light fell and gave him a spinal cord injury. And so, he had done so much for Warner Brothers and them for him. So they created this compilation album. And if you look at the names on the album, it's pretty
huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Read off some, can you? I mean,
yeah, for sure. There's
go ahead.
Lenny Kravitz, Whitney Houston, Bruce Springsteen, Eric Clapton, Isley Brothers, Aretha Franklin, obviously, B.B. King. Damn. Yeah. Phil Collins, Stevie Wonder.
That was my first album with those guys.
That's
right?
Amazing.
And so we were the only unknown band, and we did a cover of Let's Do It Again. And we had Nicole sang all the parts, and they sent it to Curtis to see if he liked it. And he liked it so much, he said, I want to sing on it. We flew out. Elliot Shiner, who was sort of one of my early mentors, he engineered the first album, and I sat behind him and tried not to annoy him. And I know I did annoy him, but I was new and I wanted to learn all this stuff. So we flew out. Gary Katz, Elliot Shiner, and I flew to Atlanta to Curtis Mayfield's one of his sort of mansion estates. And Todd Mayfield, his son, was there waiting for us. And we were going to record his verse on this song for this compilation. And we were the only unknown band. Everyone else was like super mega star, right?
Yeah.
So we're waiting 3 hours, 4 hours, and he's not there. And everyone started to be like, this is not going to work, whatever. Finally, this medical van shows up. They wheel him out. He's strapped in sort of a long bed. We put the U-87 in front of him, and he sings. And people just started crying.
That's amazing.
Everyone was just bawling, crying.
Wow.
And he sang beautifully. And he couldn't move or anything. It was, I think, maybe one of the last vocal performances, perhaps, of that time. And so we went back, we mixed it, we put it on the album, sold hundreds of thousands of copies, whatever it was. And it was a beautiful thing. And we made a video with him. He showed up in our video. And yeah, so that was how I started,
I didn't know that.
It was, crazy story, right?
That's wild.
I know. We toured, we were big in Japan. I know that's kind of a joke, but we actually were. We would go to Ohio, there would be like 3 people in the audience, nobody knew who we were. But we go to Japan, they loved this like soul music that we were doing. And we were like, we were on the radio, we had radio hits in Japan. We got a lot of love in Japan, and that was kind of what fueled the life of the group. We made another album, everyone started fighting over like, invisible money that didn't exist. And then everyone broke up. That's what bands do. But I was in the music thing at that point. I had a location. I had some training. I had a lot of passion. And so that's all I wanted to do. And, some of the people in the band were more instrumentalists. I liked the studio. Like I liked being on tour. But like, I like sleeping in my own bed and going to an air-conditioned studio and eating sushi and making perfect music. I didn't like being on stage with feedback and playing the same songs 5 nights a week. I didn't like that. I opened up a studio in the New Yorker Hotel on 34th and 9th. And it was like owned by Reverend Moon. It's a crazy thing. So it was like a really cheap hotel for like cheap Europeans. But then there were floors with all these like, Reverend Moon people. And then they had one empty floor and they wanted to rent it out to music producers, which was the stupidest idea. And they kicked us all out after 3 years. But we had a fun 3 years.
Yeah.
So I took the corner room. I was one of the first ones there. Carlos Best was there from Wu-Tang. So he was doing all the Wu-Tang stuff while we were there. And he was like, it was a hotel floor, like it was hotel rooms. It was crazy.
That's wild.
And Rawkus Records was there. So the Rawkus Records dudes would come knock on my door, like at first, like, hey, how do we do this? How do we do that? It was, Rupert Murdoch's son and then 2 friends from Brown. And they said, like, let's have a record company. And if you're Rupert Murdoch's son and you want a record company, guess what? You can have a record company. So they were green, but they were passionate and they had good taste. And they had a good work ethic. So they kept stopping by, like, how do we do this? How do we do that? And finally, I was like, you guys stop stopping by, ask me how to do it. Just make me your chief engineer, and then it'll be much easier. And they're like, okay. So I became not the chief engineer of Rawkus, but one of them. And we did the Lyricist Lounge albums with Mos Def and Talib Kweli and, all this like really good quality underground anti-commercial, cool hip hop, right?
Yeah, I love that.
And we were just mixing and mastering, recording, and all kinds of stuff. And then a band came our way called Wax Poetic, and we recorded them in the hotel room, and all that stuff. There was a lead singer at that time was a girl from Texas named Nora Jones. Before she was Nora Jones, and so she was the singer, songwriter, featured singer of this kind of groovy, jazzy thing.
Yeah.
And we did a bunch of recordings. We ended up signing them to Ultra Records. Patrick Moxley is someone I had known just from being in New York for a long time. I brought him the project and he was like, sure. So we toured with that. And then, Blues Traveler was in there too. And Olu Dara, who's Nas's father. We did his album with Dr. John, Cassandra Wills. So, it was just being in New York at that time. It was an epicenter, working like crazy, started having little kids, didn't want to get home at 4 and 5 in the morning when they woke up at 6. Kind of wanted to be part of that.
Yeah.
So I started teaching, and I taught at SAE New York. And that was really fun. It was my first job just teaching and getting home for dinner with the kids. And I loved it. And I loved teaching. It was really fun and it was great. A little traditional SAE was, it was sort of like analog consoles and analog tape machines. And, and things were starting to move away from that, and I knew it.
Yeah.
I was a Pro Tools guy at that point. I had Pro Tools 1.0. It crashed all the time. It worked terribly. We lost people's like performances all the time. There'd be like a beautiful saxophone solo with a big static burst in the middle of it that it was the bleeding edge. But I stuck with it because I wasn't going to buy a Neve console, no. And a Studer. We didn't have the money and we wanted to go with the new thing,
Yeah.
So then after 5 years at SAE, Dubspot was just starting and they invited me to do a guest lecture. And after one lecture, they're like, you have to work here. And I was like, yes, I do. Really like number one international brand for electronic music. Yeah. And EDM was fresh at that point, fresh and new. The technology, Ableton was, right in there and, wasn't a Pro Tools thing. It was an Ableton thing, some Logic in there. It was like, what is that Blues Brothers? Like we do both kinds of music, country and Western. Well, I was always like, we do both kinds of music, like progressive house and dubstep. We do both kinds of music. And that's all it was. Yeah. It was either progressive house or dubstep. And everyone was in Ableton and it was really vibrant. It was just a really wonderful time where like the major labels had started to crash, right? Mm-hmm. Napster, all this stuff. So you had all these super talented people also looking for something new to do, not just for career, for money, for paying the rent and all the rest of it. So all these super talented refugees from the major label thing all got together. Dan Giovi was very good at finding people and bringing people together. He was a master of that. And we rocked out for a while. And then there was an idea of creating an online school. And there were no online music schools. I don't think there were. No. And so
that's what attracted me actually to Dubspot is they were the first to really put Ableton tutorials on YouTube at a wide scale. They were the very first online presence for online training for Ableton at all.
And they were really good videos.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the brand had a edutainment kind of quality to it.
For sure.
That was really smart. We started the first online school and I created the mixing and mastering program for that. And it was a terrible user experience, the first school. I mean, it was terrible. We were like on live chats and like, the connectivity, there was no Zoom yet. And it was like there were like 40 people in the class and they all were asking questions at the same time. And I was trying to chat the answers. I mean, and then everyone would send homework and we'd listen to the homework and then write a review and send it back to them. I'd be up until like 5 a.m. It was a prototype, as we say, as entrepreneurs. It was prototyping, but it was the right idea. And then when Dubspot sort of fell apart, taking it full circle, I chilled out for a year and then I started the online school and that's been, that and, been rocking with that for 9 years. Yeah. And still doing freelance work. We're in the short list for a Grammy for Best Classical Recording 2 years ago.
Oh, congrats.
Didn't get it, but we got really close with Zach James, who won the Grammy 2 years ago for Best Opera Performance. So there's, and I'm still doing stuff, but I really love the teaching. There's a book coming out and I get to take summers off and do nothing. And then school, we kind of keep a regular calendar year. And then September, we start up again. We rock all the way through, whatever, June.
I mean, that's quite the journey. I totally agree. And I work from home now. It's nice to be able to clock in and not wear pants and be able to teach online. And like, I do a lot of online teaching now through Zoom or whatever. And I really enjoy it. And I feel like teaching, and you probably experienced this as well. Like I've learned more by teaching.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. And you always get questions from people that like are asking something that maybe you haven't thought of in a certain way. Then you have to like look into it and then you just, But But your classes really helped me. Your tutorials and videos back in the day when it was Mixmaster Wyatt, like I used to binge them and just like chug coffee at like 10 p.m. at night, really helped me a lot. Really did.
I'm glad to hear it. You know,
you're really heavy on the plugins, but like in a good way. Like I feel like I learned a lot, especially in the analog world, using like UAD plugins and like just workflow for mixing and mastering and joining all of the webinars back in the day. It really gave me a good foundation for sure.
I'm glad to hear it, man. And I was happy to do some stem mastering for you. And there wasn't much to do. I mean, you put it all together, man. I just, whatever. What did I do? Make it a little louder or something. I don't know.
That was my first album, and it's funny because I go back and listen to it, and I opened the project like a year ago, and I was like, what was I doing? Like this was...
But it's always like that.
Oh, yeah. No, and it was kind of fun. It was a nice little time capsule of like realizing how ignorant I was with like my mixing and sound design and like compression, saturation, all that stuff. But you made it pop. I remember like sending you those stems, and I listened to them, like I said, a year ago, and I was like, how did he make that shit work? Like, I don't even know. But this speaks a lot to you, and obviously you've been doing it a long time. So
I think that it's a golden age for music production, that the tools just keep getting better and better. And man, if I had, you know, all these tools now in the 90s, I'd be a billionaire. I would never let anyone in the studio. They'd never get to see what I was doing. And if I had like Ozone and Soothe and FabFilter stuff, and you know, like people are like, what did you do? And it's really cool. You know, it's really beautiful that like bedroom producers now are making independent music that sounds every bit as good or better than the major label stuff. And that wasn't like that back in the day, man. In the 90s, the major labels had a chokehold on everything. It was an evil fraternity. And it wasn't even always that good, you know? Sometimes you'd just be like, what? And so, you know, the fact that independent music is so good now, that bedroom producers are so good, and the technology is so good, and that you can make a competitive product with your headphones in your bedroom, in your home studio, that's a beautiful liberation.
For sure.
You know, it really is. And the quality of the music reflects it. The music sounds crazy better than ever now. It really does. And I listen to the oldies and I have my little nostalgia, but I, you know, just like when you say you listen to some old and you're like, what was I thinking? And what was I doing? And I still do that. You know, I'm like, I've been doing this for 35 years. I still do that. Like 2 years ago, like, really? What? What? Let me open that up and fix it. You know, like, there's always that. But when I listen to, you know, music even from 10 years ago, the quality's not as good. No. And thank goodness the loudness were chilled out for the most part. People, almost everybody was like, all right, well, let's throw down our arms. Like, sounds better, a little less loud. Oh yeah, great. You know, that was an ugly little period that people sort of chilled out on. Music's never sounded better. It's never been more fun to make music. Lots of plugins are always coming out, you know, and a lot of them I'm like, I don't need that. It's like a soccer team, you know, you have your 11 players. If it can't beat one of your 11 players, it's not on the team, you know? And then you have a couple substitutes or whatever it is, right? So if you don't beat the ATR 102 for me, then you're not going to play, you know? I'm not using, you know? I don't like the hoarding thing of plugins or if I get that plugin, then all of a sudden I'm going to have a harmonic convergence and my life's going to, you know, all of a sudden like go into like gold dust and Bitcoins and stuff. No, I think you have to know what you're doing. You have to have good monitoring. You have to practice and you have to reference. You have to, you know, these are like old school. You have to reference, take some top material and A/B with it at an equal listening volume and see where you're at. And that's a big part of it. But man, I would say this, you know, one of the interesting things is, you know, I keep office hours twice a week for anyone who ever bought mixing and mastering. If you buy mixing and mastering, you get office hours for life with no additional payment ever. Right? Oh,
nice.
Because sometimes people start something and then they get busy and then they come back to it. And and I like it too, because it keeps me on my toes. But let me tell you, we have live feedback sessions twice a week. We've been doing that for 5 years. People keep getting better.
Yeah.
Like, and it took a little while for the school, like a ballet school or a martial arts school, whatever, for just like the time. There's no substitute for time. But man, when I listen to the listening sessions of my students now, woo, it's scary good.
That's got to be fun. That's got to be really fun too. Yeah.
It's fun. And it's not one genre. You know, Dubspot was kind of got a little, you know, pigeonholed a little bit. And this is like everything and all age groups. And people are not even using the same DAW. They're not always using the same plugins. They're using the universal workflow that I did try to create for people, but they're making all kinds of music and they all listen together with this cross-pollination thing. It's been, cool. And for me, it's been really gratifying just being blown away by the quality. So, and it took a while. Yeah.
I feel the same way too about my students. Is like you're like a mama bird and they just like spread their wings and fly and just see them grow and get better. It's like the best feeling ever.
It takes time.
So speaking of all that stuff, I know there's probably a lot of people here who are looking for some like tips or just learning more about mixing and mastering stuff. So maybe we can nerd out a little bit about some of your processes and things. What are, first of all, I guess, some common mixing mistakes that you've seen over the years?
The weirdest, most terrible, unusable mixes that I've come across, I'll ask them, like, when you were mixing, were you referencing with anything? And they're like, no. Okay, those are the bad mixes usually. Now, there are super advanced people who can kind of just go for it. But even that doesn't always work. And my top producers that I keep working with, they reference like crazy. They kind of bought into that. And then when you go to sleep at night, you know, right before you go to sleep, you can A/B with whoever and be like, oh, I'm right in there. You know, I'm not copying it, but I'm playlisting well. So I think that's a big one. I think another big one is gain structure. People try to cram too much energy into the mix bus and the energy has nowhere to go. And when energy has nowhere to go, you have weird things like the verse is louder than the chorus or something. Because then the chorus comes in and it's pushing the limiter to squeeze down on it and it gets smaller. Or the drop is smaller than the build. And just, you know, when you're just not dealing with the energy properly and allowing headroom for arrangement dynamics, that's a problem, right? Because, you know, classical music, jazz music, they have these quiet periods and then they hit you with the loud, right? And rock does that too. You know, Nirvana or whatever, not trying to date myself, but like the quiet verses and then the loud choruses. And like dynamics are exciting, you know? And if you take that away, it's not exciting. As much, right? And so gain structure, not allowing for arrangement dynamics. That's another big one, I think.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, those are two big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think like serial limiting has helped me with that as well. Like on different, like adding multiple limiters before it hits the master has like really helped tighten up some of that without making my master just do all the work, which can really like hurt some of those dynamics too.
Serial dynamic processing is so important, you know, because if you have a vocal performance and you're trying to contain it with one compressor, it's never going to work. You're not going to find one magic setting on that compressor that's going to contain it. And it doesn't mean you don't know how to compress stuff. It just means that you're barking up the wrong tree. You put 5 compressors in a row, each one doing a little bit of the work, and you get this very transparent leveling where you don't hear the compressor working, but you've contained the performance. You know, same with mastering though, same thing. One limiter, you're going to be working it pretty hard, but you build up a chain and then all of a sudden you get this very robust, loud thing, not overly loud, but loud. But you don't hear the dynamic stuff working in a way that's not musical, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Doesn't sound like a pancake.
Doesn't sound inverted or something, you know?
Yeah. Any other like common mistakes that you've seen? You talked about referencing, you talked about dynamics.
Not managing the gain structure inside the plugins. You know, even some super producers I know, I'm like, you know, and I mix with them on Zoom. We started during COVID. People used to come to my studio and then they're like, well, I'm not coming because of COVID, but let's do it over Zoom, you know, and we use audio movers, which I love.
Yeah, the Listen To plugin's really nice.
The Listen To plugin is super good and just like super high res. So I say, share me your screen. Let's look at the mix session. And invariably, all of the like FabFilter plugins are like in the red, right? Everything's in the red. Everything is clipping, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't hear it. And you're like, no, it matters. You're inducing square waves into your production and, harmonics that are not musical. And it's ruining your mix. And there are analog plugins that you don't know if you're clipping them, the input, because there's no clip light, right? So what you need to do, and like a lot of this early Slate stuff was -18 calibration. Nobody knew it. Everybody was running it like -12, and there was no clip light. And then all of a sudden, like, everyone was like, this is all a distorted mess, but they were not honoring the gain structure internally of the plugins. So the trick fix for that is, like, if you have an analog plugin, let's say you have a Pultec EQ, how do you know if you're pinning it and clipping it on the way in or out? The only way to know is to stick like a Pro Q3 after it and just look at the digital signal. I wish that Universal Audio would just put a little, I know they're very like purists and historical and all that good stuff, and I love them for it, but like if they could put a little red clip light,
that'd be nice.
And just so I could just see, like, am I clipping this EQ?
Yeah.
And so anyway, back to your question, that's a big one. Their inter-plugin gain structure management is sloppy. And they're like, why does my mix sound all weird? And that's a big one,
It definitely can be, for sure. I mean, Ableton in all their meters or devices, they do have like an output meter.
It's the analog ones where people go astray, but sometimes also people just ignore the clips, the clip lights,
Yeah.
They're like, and that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, I mean, clipping, I feel like, is becoming like the new loudness wars, where like everybody wants to clip everything, which is cool. I mean, it's kind of a weird phenomenon that if you just start chopping off peaks, that you kind of almost get some of your volume back, like in a sense.
Well, I love clipping, I love clipping, and we were clipping before there were plugins. Like we would have like a Prism converter or a DCS converter. Howie Weinberg, great mastering engineer. He mastered a bunch of stuff for us, and he did Blues Traveler, but we used to take him all kinds of stuff. And he would take a DAT. I know most people are too young to know what a DAT is, but it was a digital audio cassette tape. And that's what we used to mix to DAT. It was like an early digital format. So he would take your DAT and he would put it on his Studer, slam it to his Studer 2-track, and then he would master off the tape, Then when he came back in, he'd come back in hot to the converters, and you'd see the clip lights on those converters clipping, and they were just sawing off that spiky triangle and making it sort of like that. It's a smoothing effect. It allows you to make things louder and also smoother. But if you overly clip, it sounds distorted and messed up.
Yeah.
Not all music can be clipped, right? For you to have good music, like if it's tech house, you can clip it. Hip hop, you can clip it. Very dynamic music, you can't set the right threshold because it's moving around too much. So it has to be rhythmic music that's keeping a similar kind of thing. And then you can just get that clip, just right. For me, there's lots of good clipping tools out there. There's K-Clip and there's
Standard Clip.
Standard Clip, which is cool. I like it.
It's so ugly, but I love it.
No, dude. It's like Windows
XP,
early 90s. Let's go find me, get an interface. But my favorite clipper that I like is Pro L2, is a limiter, and you put it in clipping mode. Yeah. So if you take the attack and you make it the slowest, and you take the release and you make it the fastest, and you put it on modern, and then you listen to the delta, it should sound like, and that's what you're taking off the signal. Oh yeah. It's the cleanest clipper, in my opinion. Maybe I'm just a FabFilter guy or whatever, which I am, but it's the cleanest clipper, and I get good clipping off that thing. And I've tried other things, but I come back to that every time,
So you just slow attack, fast release, modern style, and then you just slam it. Of
clipping.
You just slam the input?
Don't slam it. No. If it's a drum forward, let's say it's techno or something, which is such a vibrant space. I thank goodness for techno, right? Like progressive house got corny, no one listen anymore, but like techno's still cool, So let's say you have a techno track going, you just want the top of the transients just to be clipped a little bit. You have to be very subtle with it. Half a dB, 0.2, half a dB. It's not like 3 dB of clipping. No, that's going to sound like a crunchy mess. So you lightly clip it and you put that clipper before your maximizer. And then your maximizer's so happy. Whatever. I'm an ozone guy still to this day, IRC4. That's, like I just can't beat that. But if you put a little clipper in front of it, oh man, it's smoother, louder, it's better. But like I said, you're not clipping jazz, right? You're not clipping classical. You're not. And you're not clipping folk rock or country or something. You're not. Yeah. I mean, people do, but people drive with their feet, like whatever. You can, but no. But for certain things, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to try that. I've always thought that like a Pro L would be a true limiter, not.
You can turn it into the best clipper ever.
That's interesting.
And, all we do is test plugins and have shootouts and nerd out. That's all we do. And yeah. 6 years we had test kitchen on a Friday, and it was like we'd have classes all week, and then people just want to turn their brains off on Friday, not think about making great art, and just like compare plugins and shootouts and stuff. And it was never recorded because we talk so much shit about all these companies and like whatever, and like it was never recorded, but we were curating the plugins for the school. And we had massive shootouts and blind tests and all kinds of stuff, so cool. Yeah, I know.
That's awesome. Fun. Yeah, I missed that. We did shootouts back in the day when I was there too. That was fun.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun. Now we do it only if there's something really, not every plugin that comes out or do we goof around with. No.
So what are some of your other latest go-to tools and plugins for mixing, mastering that you're excited about?
I love Bloom.
I've heard of Bloom. I haven't played with
Bloom. Irk Sound. Those guys did it again. And it's no, I don't want to make any enemies or whatever, but there was Gullfoss that was like came out, and everyone was like, Gullfoss is going to save the world. And I think people had like a little honeymoon with Gullfoss, and then most of the people in our school were like, it's good for some stuff, it does some stuff. Sometimes I feel like it's working against me a little bit and stuff like that. And it's and so what that is obviously is there is sort of a EQ contour of good sound, and it's pushing your sound into the good sound according to Gullfoss or whatever it is. So that's kind of AI-ish kind of thing that I don't like usually, but I'm open-minded and whatever. And so when Bloom came around, it was sort of the same idea where it's a tonal balancing thing that kind of auto-tonal balances and pushes it into a sort of a good sound preset EQ curve in a way.
Yeah.
And that's something that I would probably not like, except for it's really good and it sounds really good. And I've been using it in mastering projects, and people are like, woo, you got something new for the last, and I'm a hater. I hate everything for the most part. And I love that thing. I think that was really good. I think Soothe was another really good one. The Leapwing Audio guys from Belgium, Dyn13 is, or whatever that is incredible. Their Stage 1, 2, they shouldn't have put a number in their names because it confuses me.
Leapwing Audio, Dyn 1.
2, but 2. I think it's right.
Yeah,
it's a little confusing.
It's $200.
Not cheap.
Yeah.
With our school, you get a lot of academic discounts. Most, plugin makers will give you a discount. That's good.
Yeah.
But their stuff is really interesting. There is no under the hood, really. It's sort of a flat GUI or whatever you want to call it. And they're not necessarily doing anything different. They're just doing it better. So Fab Filter was about making a filter. This is like, digital engineering. You and I don't do that stuff, like writing codes for filters and stuff. I don't think you do. You didn't used to.
No, I have no interest in that.
Same. But I love the people who do it. And so if you can make a better filter, chopping up sound like into 4 quadrants, treating them differently, and then putting Frankenstein back together and it sounds good. That's filter digital engineering, right?
Yeah.
And the better the filter, the cleaner it sounds, the more HD it sounds, and all the rest of it. And their stuff is so good. I love it. Dyne 1, I love. Stage 1, love it. Use it in mastering all the time. Yeah, hats off to those guys, 100%.
So smart parallel multiband dynamics processor is the Dyne 1. So I guess like this is in a sense maybe like tricked up version of Pro MB that we used a lot back in the day.
Sort of. Yes, you can sort of make a Pro MB into a Dyne 1, but it's multi-band, mid-side parallel compression in a plugin. So when we, parallel compression, why do we care? It's an old school thing, right? It's before plugins. You would take the drums on an analog console, you'd mult them over to another set of faders. You'd put a compressor like a Devil Lock or like a real one, Level Lock, on them. You'd crunch them to pieces, and then you'd add the crunchy drums with the real drums, and you got the best of both worlds. You got the density from your parallel bus, and then the live dynamics from your uncompressed signal, and you'd blend them. And it's a cooking technique that can't be achieved any other way. So we can do that in DAWs, whatever DAW you're in, you can do it, but it's a lot of gymnastics, like, post fader sends and pre-fader sends and buses and all this routing stuff. And I teach it, it's all in the school, but you can put this on a vocal, a bass, a drum bus, the master bus. And then you have multi-band parallel compression where you can almost like tone sliders, you can have a certain amount of parallel compression on the low end, a different amount on the mid-range, different amount on the high end. You can do mid-side, so you can do parallel multi-band compression on the mid signal, less on the side, so they're more airy and light. And the quality of the filters, it feels like cheating. Dan, you have to trust me, man.
Okay,
download the demo.
You.
It's like like I showed it to people and they're like, I feel like I'm cheating. I'm like, yeah. We are, I guess.
I'll hit them up and maybe get that NFR. Be like, hey, you want to send that my way?
Yeah, do it. I mean, these guys, again, little boutique company. If you're not a good soccer player, you're not getting on my team. They're on the team, 100%.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I feel like not a lot of producers, especially starting out, know anything about mid-side. Maybe explain why that's important for EQ and compression.
Sure. Yeah, mid-side, started as a mic technique, really, sort of being able to play with width. And why do we care in modern music production? Well, what comes down the center? The kick drums down the center. The bass is usually down the center. The lead vocals usually down the center, the snares down the center. And so that's your power. And then what's not in the center is stereo effects, things that are panned wide, Haas affected things, things that are panned counter. And so when you want to apply pressure, which is what limiting compression is, a concentration of pressure. And then if you overdo that, you kill the power. But if you squeeze it just right, you concentrate the power. You go past it, you lose the power, right? So let's say we want to concentrate some power. If we want to concentrate the power of the groove in the center, that's mid compression. But maybe the sides are like, really fun shakers and tambourines and, white noise and delays and stuff like that. Do we want to squeeze those or let them be light and airy, right? Yeah. We want them to be free and the pressure to be in the center. So that's the most common mid-side approach, And then there's, that's sweetening. And then, also we do corrective things. So let's say you have a vocal mix someone sent you and the lead vocal is too quiet, but the backgrounds are the right loudness. Well, with mid-side, we can go to mid-side EQ or mid-side multiband compression, kind of try to capture that lead vocal, leave the backgrounds alone, and turn them up, right? Turn up the lead vocal. That's fancy, and you can't do that unless you have some kind of mid-side capabilities. So it's not just something to be fancy. No.
I mean, that was something you taught me way back in the early days on the masters. Just do mid-side EQ and just rolling off somewhere to like 100 to 200 hertz off of the sides with a side EQ. And I was like shocked back in the day, just being like, oh wow, like that actually really concentrates the lows and really cleans up the mids. It really does.
And it kind of feels like when you ever like go to the doctor and get your ears cleaned out, like you kind of gives you that kind of like, like you took the mud out of the sides or something,
Yeah.
It's
like one of those,
because it doesn't want to be there. You don't need subs in your sides unless you're doing like new age meditation music, and then it's really dope. Actually,
some good spa music.
Yeah, there you go. And then you want some subby stereo subs,
Yeah, it's therapeutic.
Chakra, whatever, binaural, I don't know, whatever that stuff is.
Have you discovered anything like AI related that was kind of surprising to you? I know that's like a hot topic these days. Everybody wants to talk about. Yeah. I didn't know if you've discovered anything in the world of music. It doesn't have to be mastering. It could be whatever you thought was cool.
I mean, I thought Drake's diss track with Snoop Dogg and Tupac was great. I know he got in like trouble and everyone got mad at him and everyone said Kendrick won and all the rest of it. But I thought that was very creative and daring, actually.
Yeah.
And kind of true hip hop spirit of like slightly illegal kind of thing, which I thought was dope. And I couldn't believe how good I thought it was executed and stuff. So there's that, for mixing and mastering, AI, I don't know if I like that idea. I think, there's lots of, what it's for? I don't think it's for high art music people like me and you. I think it's for like a Burger King commercial or something where like, you're there in a nice shirt at a studio getting paid money and there's some over caffeinated like ad executives behind you, like holding a Starbucks and spraying on you. And they're like, make that sound better. And, and you're trying to make a 30-second spot. I think that's where like, I would use AI. Definitely. Yeah. We're not making like, it's not Radiohead, so or whatever. So I think it has its place, but there hasn't been anything for us in our school where we were like, yay, AI or something.
Yeah.
I think what it's doing more for our producers is that they get to do vocals that they could never do, like a guy singing something. But he was like, I really hear a female singer on this. Here's I'm going to sing it as good as I can. And then I'm going to make it sound like whatever, Rihanna or something. And that I think is cool because if there had been no auto-tune, there would be no T-Pain. And where would the world be without T-Pain, right? I'm just saying, like, you would never have heard from him without technology. So that part's good.
Which is ironic because he actually has a really beautiful voice without it, which is crazy. I don't think people know that. T-Pain actually has a really good voice if you just turn off the auto-tune.
That's funny. That's like when Dolly Parton says, actually, I have an incredible ass.
It's like, oh, we had no idea. Very nice.
Sorry, Dolly.
She's winning.
No, I'm a T-Pain fan. All I'm saying is without some of these technologies, we wouldn't hear from some of these stars, and they have made a big contribution. So I'm not anti. No. How about you? Is there an AI thing that's like, you're like, yes, I'm doing this?
I think for image generation, like the new Dolly by OpenAI is actually kind of surpassing Midjourney, which I used to use a lot. I think it's actually getting better, kind of taking over that space. There's a lot of really interesting sites. Like there's it's not AI, but it's called playphrase.me, and you can get sound bites from movies. And so you type in the word like hot dog and it plays every scene of almost every movie you can imagine that has the word hot dog in it. And so if you want to grab like little sound bites before a drop or something, that could be cool. There's another one called fakeyou.com, and you can upload your own vocal recordings. It'll regenerate it as somebody else singing it.
That's the stuff that I think is kind of fun, actually. And the other thing that I've seen artists do is for artwork, like you said, and for some video content, they're for not too much money producing something that seems to complement the music visually without having to spend $5,000 or whatever it is,
right.
And I think that's cool because sometimes listening to music, sometimes when you have a visual, it's more immersive or something. For me, it is, you know?
There's sites like Lander who have been around for a couple years.
Yeah.
I tested out their stuff like maybe 2 years ago, and I was fairly impressed. I don't think it's something I would use. It's not something I would use for an official release, kind of like you mentioned. But I think if I was going to try to clean up demos for, say, like sync licensing or something like that, and I was just cranking out as much 1 minute tracks as I could, and I didn't want to sit down and master them to perfection, but wanted them to sound good to share, I think that could be really helpful.
It's like I said, some of the AI stuff is for Burger King, and some of the Lander stuff might be for demos and stuff.
Yeah.
We did because we were competitive weirdos, and we did like we all tried to beat Lander, and it wasn't hard to beat it. But it's also like, we got the Olympics going on now, but it's also like when you go second in the long jump, you know how far you have to jump. And so like, you're like, here's this Lander thing. I like beat up on it. And it wasn't that hard to beat up on it, but it was better than I thought it would be. And actually it didn't do nothing. It did something. It did something. It wasn't just like, we'll just do something minimal. It tried to do something, and it was good. It was good. It lacks a little, what I would call top shelf intensity. It's not intense. It doesn't, like, a good mastering should have packed in energy. It should have this like energy to it. And it doesn't do that. But it makes it listenable and playable.
It'll be interesting to see what that looks like in the next like 5 years as the algorithm gets smarter.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Who knows? I think it has its place.
Another thing I recently heard of, I don't know if you've heard of this. It's like music sessions in real time remotely. It's like a Submix. Have you heard of Submix? They just released, and I haven't tried it. Have you?
I haven't, but people in the school have, and I think COVID was so crazy and challenging, but online collaboration flourished.
Yeah,
and the technology kids rose to the occasion to try to create platforms where you really could collaborate very seamlessly. And it's happening. It's getting there. And a whole bunch of different companies are doing it. Steinberg has its own thing. I'm a Cubase guy, so I love all DAWs. I'm non-denominational, but that's the car that I drive is Cubase, and I do speak other languages. I have a green belt or whatever, in Ableton and Logic and everything else. But so they're all doing it, and it's cool. Actually, I think there's a number of producers in our school where like the cello came from Chile, and then I had the strings done in Bosnia, and then this there was a singer in wherever, Ecuador, and it sounds like, if no one had told you that they all were in the same room at the recording studio. Good musicians who know how to record themselves. That's brilliant. They're like, I'll send you back the strings, and they're like, they sound good. Or a vocal and it sounds good. That's brilliant.
No, definitely. Like the collaboration thing in COVID exploded. I think like Mixed In Key tried to rush their plugin. It was called Satellite. Did you ever use that? It was super janky. They tried to make like a DAW inside the DAW, and it was just pathetic. It was really sad.
It's not that easy to do, I don't think.
No. I mean, I'm not a coder, so it's easier for me to shit on it because I don't know what I'm doing with that.
No.
But the Submix is interesting because I think it's the first one that's actually a video call with high quality audio and MIDI in all DAWs and plugins. It's all in one.
Which
amazing. I don't know of anything else. So I was curious if you tried
I remember.
it.
I mean, if you remember, like back in the day, Splice started with like collaboration as one of their goals, and then they kind of morphed into this other thing.
Yeah.
But that didn't work either.
No.
Like if if there was any discrepancy of like your like a version of a plugin and it wasn't the same, and then you spent so much time like, this is not working, and you were not making music. No, but it's going to get better. Yeah.
For sure. Like a lot of things. I do miss the free cloud storage from Splice. That was nice. You could just upload. And I think eventually they realized, like we have to have more servers for free, basically, for these people. And so they cut that out. But I do miss the free storage for all of my Ableton projects. That was nice.
Yeah, and they kind of like, they prototyped a bunch too, and then they found something that worked. And, again, some of the really, really good producers, they use it so quickly, so seamlessly. And then the Loop Masters guys have their little similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
And people like that thing too. So yeah, again, if I had this stuff in the 90s, dude, we'd be on my private island right now. Yeah, no, just kidding.
Yeah. You did find a time machine, make that happen.
Can we work on that?
Yeah, for sure. If anybody listening knows how to build one, hit us up.
Yeah, privately, time machine. Yeah.
Privately, yeah. Dude, well, I want to respect your time, Dan. I know you got stuff going on, but I'm just happy to see your face, dude. It's been a long time.
It's been too long. It's been too long, Dan. Yeah. Well, so the next thing is I'm going to copy you and I'm going to get my podcast going. I have a few up there.
Do it.
But I'm sitting in my new studio in Chester County, Pennsylvania. My neighbors are horses. I don't have human neighbors. Everywhere I look, there's horses. It's fantastic. But I'm going to get my podcasting series back up and going. And you're coming and I'm going to interview you, dude.
I would love that, dude. Let me know. What time and place. Just hit me up. I'm down.
Oh yeah. I think everyone in the school, everyone would love to hear all of your latest visions of things. Yeah.
I'll tell everybody to go buy your stuff.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah.
That works.
But I was going to actually ask you, what upcoming projects are you working on right now? But it sounds like you answered some of that.
The big one is the book,
the book. Okay.
The book. And I've been threatening to write this book forever. And then every time I'd sit down, somebody would ask me for something and I'd lose my train of thought. And then I'd sit down a week later and start to write the book and it just didn't work. So I took all of my lectures, had them transcribed, gave them to an editor who put them into real language.
Nice.
And now I just have to clean it up a little bit and add some pictures. But I'd say by the spring, there should be a mixing manual from me.
Okay.
Yeah. So the book's coming.
That's awesome.
And classes are starting up in the third week of September, and if people can't afford it, they hit me privately. We have a sliding scale. I like to not let money get in the way. I made $1 million in my garage, so I like to give back,
Hell yeah, man. That's awesome.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I love that.
And I do it all the time. So don't worry about the list price, hit me privately. So yeah, it's really all about the school, the book. And then I'm just doing projects as they come, mastering projects. People hit me. I don't really take a lot of projects anymore just because I can't. Mm-hmm. But if it's an old good friend or something cool that I'm into, I'll do it. And short of that, I'm talking to the horses in the morning, drinking coffee.
Honestly, I feel like that's how I want to retire some days, just to be chilling on a horse ranch, peeing off my back porch in the morning as the sun comes up with nobody around to see it.
I did that this morning.
That's beautiful.
I did. I did.
That's how I grew up. I miss that. That's how, it was my childhood, man. I miss it.
Dude, we'll get you down here. There's a guest house. There's a pool. It's dope. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude,
and 2 studios and all that. Yeah. And again, I'm looking at 400 boxes of equipment and acoustic materials. And yeah, I wish I had some Oompa Loompas or something,
just some minions.
I can't even pick up these boxes. So anyway, somehow I'm going to have to transform this, but we'll be up and running in the next month or so.
Sweet.
Yeah. So we'll get you down here in the flesh and barbecue or something.
Here's a random thought I had, and maybe I'll cut this out, but have you ever thought of taking all the transcriptions and everything you sent your guy for the book and turning it into an AI chatbot?
And not until you've just said that now.
Because it'd be very easy. Since you transcribed all of that information, it'd be so easy to do.
That's an amazing
I
idea.
actually I just did that with my podcast. I have a guy that I hired. I transcribed every episode, and he's trained a bot on it, and it's working. Yeah, I mean, then you could have that as part of your course or something and save yourself from emails maybe if people have questions.
I don't answer emails anyway. I'm a select all delete guy. If you don't text me, I hate emails. They're terrible. They're like a to-do list that someone else can add to and you can't, it's no. And when people say hey, could you listen to my song? What do you think of my kick drum? I am not doing that in the morning. I'm not sitting there like your kick drum sounds like it has a little extra top, like no. I can't stand Facebook. I hate all social media.
Too.
I can't stand it. I think it's poisonous and vile. So we use Discord, which is really, I love. And so once you're in the school, the first thing you do is you get on our Discord channel and then you can DM me. And that I do check all the time, like all day long. So if you're in the school, you hit me on Discord privately, or we have our little chat group, I'm good with that. Everything else, no.
Yeah, cool.
I tried and it just was terrible. Yeah. No.
Yeah. I mean, even for Discord, if people had questions, I mean, you could have a bot. I don't know if you could integrate.
It's interesting. I love the idea. I like the idea. Are we all going to be wearing Apple Vision Pros soon?
Maybe. I think it's totally possible. I have to say that I like the Meta goggles better.
Okay. Have you tried both?
I have tried both. I think Apple's approach is really more for the functional professional user, somebody who wants to use it in their daily life to make life easier. And I think that's really what they're going for. Meta is more focused on the gaming side of things, and it's pretty obvious with their game options. So I think it depends what you want to use it for, and I think that's what their like pros and cons are. So if you want just to have a good time, put on and run around and play games and like lightsaber people, Meta Quest is definitely 100 times better. If you want something functional, I think the Apple Vision is still getting there.
Yeah, it's early, I think.
It's still early. Yeah. But it'll get there.
I'm not a gamer. I just wasn't part of that thing, and I missed the boat and it's too late for me, I think. But I think the concept for education for Apple Vision Pro, it could be cool. I know it looks weird. I know it. You look very weird with that thing on, doing all this kind of weird stuff. Like I go to the Apple store and like they're doing the demos, and I'm just like, I guess I'm gonna look like that dude, or whatever. But I do think, just like I was like, who wants an Apple Watch? That's terrible. And now, like, of course, I have an Apple Watch, or something. Yeah. So
eventually. Sure. Yeah, I also think the glasses thing is probably going to be more adopted by people. So we don't not walking around wearing these giant headsets in public. But the glasses are really fascinating, like the Google Glass concept. The Apple Glass concept is, I think, where it's going to be.
Yeah, something less clunky or something.
Yes, less like a spacesuit. Yeah. Yeah, we could probably wrap this up. I actually have to leave soon. But Danny, love seeing your face, man. It's been way
likewise,
too long.
Dan.
Dude, thanks for hanging out.
Thank you for having me.
Let me know if I can help with the new podcast in any way, whatever that means. And
you will.
I'll check the book out. That's exciting. When is that coming out?
I think it's spring, realistically. It's a lot of work. And then we got to do all the visuals and stuff. But the fun thing is it's a digital book, so we can update it like very seamlessly, which will be really cool. But I'm really excited. I won't say anything. I don't want to give away the thread. But and then definitely I'd love to get you on my podcast in the fall, and we'll just keep chopping it up, and we'll get you physically down here, dude.
Dude,
it's not too far. No,
I'm here for it. Also, best place for people to connect with you, where would that be? I know you're not on the socials.
nextlevelsound.com. There's a live chat you can hit there. There's not always someone around, but we'll always get back to you if you leave your email. The YouTube channel, Next Level Sound YouTube channel, we keep stocking it with stuff. It's not like, hey, YouTubers, here's a 5-minute tip. It's like they're the full lectures that we have in the school. They're not made for YouTube. They're put on YouTube. They're directly just the way the school is. That's the two places. And like I said, no, I'm not a big emailer, but once you get into school, if you hit me on Discord, that's how you get me. And I really like Discord, actually. I think it works extremely well. And it's a nice way to be in touch without weird ads and, cats with headphones and stuff.
No, I do like Discord. I think it's a bit of a learning curve for a lot of people, but once you're in there, it's pretty easy.
It's really funny for you and I as sensitive audio people, the algorithm for like voice calls is super good. I think it has it has a Neve compressor on it or something. No, I'm serious. Like it
is smooth. Yeah.
It's smooth. I don't know what that is. I'm sensitive to this stuff like that. So, yeah.
I do know that if you have an Apollo, Discord is a nightmare if you're going to do any kind of live streaming or stuff. I've heard
I wouldn't use it for that. It's just a communication tool for me. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I know that people have had crashes on Discord with the driver from the Apollo, which is weird. Which I'm probably going to sell my Apollo for, but
what, and replace it with what?
I don't know, man. Do you have a favorite like 8-channel rack-mounted interface? Do you have a favorite?
I mean, for me, there's Prism, and that is, that's good English stuff. Prism, PR.
ISM.
Yeah. That's the best in my opinion, really? But it's not cheap. But it's you get what cheap. You pay for. Not cheap.
Yeah.
Not cheap.
Okay.
But it's, world class and certainly like professional grade. Doesn't get better in my opinion. It's been like that for decades. But I think Universal Audio is doing it right. I'm an Apollo guy. I use a Dangerous Music D to A converter that I've used forever.
Yeah.
And I'm just used to it and it sounds great. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's some other options, and I'm not going to name names, that I don't like at all, that you see around for interfaces where people and I'm just like, that thing sounds terrible to me. Yeah,
that's fine.
I'll text you privately.
Be curious.
No, before you buy something, hit me.
I absolutely will. No, this Prism looks pretty nice. Does it also have plugins that come with it, or is it just the?
It's just the D to A's and the A to D's, but it is just listening off that thing or recording. It's fantastic. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and you won't be disappointed.
I trust you when it comes to this stuff for sure. So
that's the stuff.
Well, hell yeah, man. Danny, good seeing your face. I got to head out, but dude, thanks again for joining the podcast. Everybody listening, give Danny a follow. He's a real OG and a legend. Has taught me a lot of things over the years. And maybe we'll have you back a third time down the road. It'd be fun.
You know how to get me, man. And I'll be reaching out as well. So thank you, Dan, and congratulations for all the success. And thanks, amazing, man. Yeah, thanks. Beautiful. We'll keep it going.
Yeah, man. Have fun on the horse farm.
I will.
All right, sick. I'll see you later.
Right, thanks. Cheers.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Do me a huge favor if you would and hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening to the podcast. If you don't hate the podcast, please leave a 5-star review. It would help me out a ton. Don't forget to check back on Tuesdays for new episodes. I plan on cranking out a lot more in the upcoming future. If you want to be the first to get new episodes and stay updated and get free new devices and sample packs and other stuff that I'll be sending out in the future, join the newsletter. Just go to liveproducersonline.com/newsletter and/or check out the links in the show notes. Make sure to give this guest a follow on the socials. Give them some love for spending their time. And once again, thanks for listening to the podcast. I will see you next time. Later.